Hello, Once Post Focus. Last night, Forest looked to get the Champions League dream back on track on Monday night. Can they do it, or will Crystal Palace throw another spanner in the works? Joining me to give us the opposition view, it's great to have Matt from a team called Palace back with us. Matt, morning. How are you doing today, mate?
Yeah, not too bad. Thank you. Not too bad.
Good. Good to have you with us. We're recording this the morning after the Brentford game, so I assume Matt's doing better than I am, but hopefully by Monday night we'll all be chipper and we can win. But Palace will put up a good fight, I'm sure. We'll get to that, but we should start by saying congratulations for Wembley. That must have been some day. Better for you than it was for us, but you were fantastic, weren't you?
Yeah, we were really, really good. I don't think the 3-0 scoreline flattered us. I thought we ran all over Villa, to be honest with you. They didn't really show up. We absolutely did. And yeah, just a little bit disappointed that we aren't playing you guys in the final because, as I said to you on the message, I think it would have been a bit more of a people's final. I must admit, though, that being said, the thought of losing to Forest in the final does actually seem worse than the prospect of losing the City. I can kind of cope with the prospect of losing the City, but yeah, losing to you guys might have been a bit tougher. But I do think that it would have been an incredible final, an incredible atmosphere. So disappointed in that respect, but yeah, we had a great day. I'm just hoping that we can kind of lift ourselves to go again against you guys on Monday night.
Ah, yes, we should get into that. And I can see what you're saying about City as well, because I came away from Wembley thinking, you know what, fair play, City are a really good team. We gave it a go, and it wasn't to be. But I'm pleased for Palace. I do have mates who are Villa fans as well, but I was pleased for Palace partly because you're currently 12th in the Premier League, which feels like we should just pencil Palace in for 12th every year. I think historically you do seem to finish there. So we'll come on to the FA Cup's distraction. But I just want to talk about recent form. I was looking at your April results, a real mixed bag. Drew with Southampton, where you needed, I think, a last minute goal. Beat Brighton in an absolutely wild game with loads of red cards. Then lost 5-0 and 5-2 to Newcastle and City. Then drew with Bournemouth in another game with a red card. Then drew with Arsenal, where Mateta scored a worldie. And then you beat Villa, as discussed. What kind of Palace can we expect on Monday?
I honestly have no idea because, as you say, we've been so up and down recently. And I do think that, you know, given how well we played last Saturday at Wembley, given the fact that we're now in this FA Cup final, we've now got 2 games before the FA Cup final. You know, is that going to be on the players' minds? I'd like to think that it isn't. I'd like to think that because this is our last home game before the cup final, players are going to really want to put in a performance. The fans are going to want to give them a really good send off. But yeah, we have been quite up and down. I think we've been very good at peaking when we need to peak in the last month or so. I mean, the game against Fulham in the FA Cup, we were fantastic. We beat them 3-0 away from home. That was another convincing victory. As you say, the Southampton game, we were poor and we were lucky to get something out of that. But then, of course, a few days later against Brighton, the players raised themselves again in a big game, hanging on at the end with 9 men. First time we've done the double over them since the 1930s, a massive result for us. And then obviously we've had those heavy defeats against City. Actually, in the first half an hour, we were really good. We played really well. We were 2-0 up. We could have been 3-0 up. Eze was just offside. And then we sort of capitulated, conceding before half time. And then in the second half as well, up at Newcastle, we were shocking. We didn't really turn up. Against Bournemouth, a bit better. Against Arsenal, I thought we actually played well. 2 great goals from Eze and Mateta. And then obviously on Saturday, we were brilliant at Wembley. So it has been a bit of a mixed bag. I just think it's going to be really interesting to see what Palace turns up in this game. And also, you could argue what Forest turns up because it is a much bigger game for you guys. Obviously, off the back of that defeat on Thursday night, you know, have you sort of gone? Is your season sort of on the decline? Or are you going to kind of have a big response at Selhurst on Monday night?
When it goes right for you, why does it go so right? And when it goes wrong, why does it go so wrong within games in particular? Is there anything you've spotted?
I think really, I mean, you kind of just go back to the start of the season with Palace because we had a really tough start to the season. There was a lot of change in the summer. Lots of players coming back from international duty late. That was far from ideal. I think we had one Premier League win before December. And then, you know, sort of since then, we've actually been consistently pretty good. Yes, we've had a couple of heavy defeats, but on the whole, we've been good. And I think when you look at sort of our points return, you know, it's sort of a top 6, top 7 points return. So I think I don't want to be too critical of those bad performances. I think, given how well they've done recently, I can kind of understand it. And also with the cup semi final on the horizon, I do sort of get it. But I think when we're good, we have all of our best players on the pitch. We have one of probably the smallest squads in the Premier League in terms of depth and quality. We don't spend as much as other Premier League teams. Last summer, we made a profit in terms of transfers, which is basically unheard of for Premier League teams. I think we've spent 30, we've never spent more than 30 million on a player. We're one of only 4 teams in the Premier League this season to do that. 2 of them are going down, so we don't have a deep squad. We don't have the squads of other Premier League teams. So when we are missing the likes of Adam Wharton or Mark Gahey, these sorts of guys, that does make a massive difference. Obviously, as you said, we've had a few suspensions recently. They weren't ideal. Also, we are trying to manage players like Adam Wharton because he had his groin surgery earlier in the season. He's still only 21. He's got a massive future. So we do need to look after him. But yeah, I think when our best 11 players are on the pitch, we are a threat for anyone because we know our system. I think we probably play our system better than most, certainly better than the likes of Man United and people like that. But, we know our system. And I think when you look at our team, we've been very good from set pieces recently, which isn't something you can always say from Palace. And also, we do carry a threat in the final third with the likes of Eze, Sarr, and Mateta. So, yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing with Palace is just making sure all of our best players are on the pitch because when that is the case, I do honestly think we can beat anyone.
Just picking up on what Matt was saying there about Palace's consistency, I was just thinking back to the Premier League wage bills for last season. For people who are listening or watching, Palace's wage bill was 17th highest in the league. Forest was 9th. So Palace do this consistently on a budget, and Matt references the small squad. And there's quite a few similarities to us as well. Small squad, actually results have been good for quite a while, just that ours have dropped off, which makes me think this is going to be another really tight game. Talking of predictable tight squads, can you give us a predicted 11, Matt? I imagine I could do this almost, but I'm interested to hear if it's what I think it's going to be. What would your predicted 11 be?
Yeah, so it'll be Dean Henderson in goal, and then at back it'll be Mark Gahey, Max Lacroix, and Chris Richards. The wing backs, Tarek Mitchell on the left, Daniel Munoz on the right. In the centre midfield, I'd imagine it'll be Adam Wharton and one other. It could be Daichi Kamada, it could be Jefferson Lerma, or it could be Will Hughes. Given how well he's played in the last couple of games, I'd imagine it'll be Daichi Kamada, and then it'll be Eze and Sarr just behind Mateta. Obviously, we're speaking before the press conference, so that's what I'm hoping the team's going to be. If there are any little injuries or niggles or anything like that, you'd imagine that players would be rested.
Do you think as well? He seems to be managing a few minutes for players. I don't know. Mateta completed 90 since he came back, and Sarr and Eze get hooked quite early. Is that just him managing minutes with Wembley in mind still?
Yeah, I think so. I think Ismaila Sarr has played a lot of football this season, and he's a real sort of impact player. He's incredibly dynamic. Think someone like Anthony Elanga. So he's the sort of player that I think we do need to manage. Obviously, Bireze is a massive player for us as well. And then you mentioned Jean-Philippe Mateta. Obviously, he had the injury against Millwall in the FA Cup. Everyone knows about that. Since he's come back, I don't think he's been quite at full fitness. And to be honest with you, I don't think he's actually been at his sharpest. Obviously, he scored the excellent goal at the Emirates, but I do think maybe there's been a little dip in his confidence. So Eddie Nketiah has been getting a few more minutes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Mateta, the goals he scored, I think he scored that brilliant goal against Arsenal. The goal he scored against Wolves was a great goal as well. Are you saying you think his confidence is more affected in the 50-50 challenges and stuff like that, which would be entirely understandable? Have you seen that?
Yeah, possibly. I think obviously with Mateta, he was so hot at the end of last season, and then he had a really good spell this winter as well. Let's be honest, it's only natural that there might be a little bit of drop off at some point because he's the striker for Crystal Palace. He's not prime Erling Haaland, so there's always going to be a little drop off. But I do think maybe his confidence was affected slightly. I think in terms of the 50-50s, I haven't really sort of noticed him pulling out or anything like that. I just think he hasn't quite been as sharp. And yeah, listen, he's still a massive player for us. Obviously, he missed the penalty at Wembley. Thankfully, that didn't cost us. But he is the sort of player that it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't score in the FA Cup final because he does just sort of seem to relish those big moments when everyone's watching.
Yeah, he was brilliant at Wembley as well, to be fair. I thought it was a great performance. Just a reminder for people, by the way, when it comes to Trent navigation, the game is on TV and there is a bank holiday Monday, so you can get down to Nav in the afternoon. There's a music festival, 15 local bands. It's free entry starting at noon till 8 p.m. Obviously, it finishes at 8 p.m. because that's when Forest at Palace kicks off. So you can watch the game. It's on Sky on the big screen, outdoors, multiple big screens, I should say, and also indoors if you can get in there as well. So thanks to Nav for their support and enjoy the game there if you're not heading down to London. Let's talk a little bit about Eddie Nketiah. I will die on the hill that I think he's actually a good player and he's having a bad season. You might tell me I'm wrong and he's rubbish and Forest dodged a bullet there. Well, what have you made of Nketiah?
I think he's a good finisher. I just don't really feel as though he suits our system, to be honest with you. I feel as though if we were going to splash out, and listen, by our standards, we did splash out on Eddie Nketiah. If we were going to do that, I would have gone a bit more like for like in terms of someone similar to Jean-Philippe Mateta, because we aren't afraid in getting the ball forward quickly. We do build out from the back like basically every Premier League side. Obviously, we like to get our wing backs high, but our kind of game and Glasner's tactics are built on playing forward passes quickly, breaking the lines. We aren't afraid to get it forward. Eddie Nketiah is not a target man. He's not going to be able to hold up the ball. He's not going to win flick-ons for the likes of Ismail Assar. So I do think that, there is a player in there, and I do think he's more than capable of scoring goals, but I just feel as though he doesn't really suit us. And, that's quite tricky because we spent a lot of money on him. Obviously, he's a South London boy as well. You'd like to think that it would work, but yeah, I just think stylistically, in terms of what Glasner wants from a forward, it doesn't really work.
Yeah, I think that's similar to the way we play as well. Like we're pretty we are direct. So yeah, I think he would struggle in this team. I think we would have had to adapt to him. I just think he's a good player. I don't know which. Can you think of a Premier League team based on his style where he would really fit in? This is asking you off the top of our head.
Yeah, I think maybe a team that maybe presses a little bit more, maybe a team like a Bournemouth or someone like that. He's more kind of like for like in terms of an Evan Nielsen. It's tricky because I think when you look at the modern day Premier League centre forwards, people you want someone that can run in behind, you want someone that can hold up the ball, you want someone that can win aerial duels, and also obviously you want someone who is clinical in front of goal. And I think he is a good finisher. And I think he can run in behind, but in terms of holding up the ball, winning aerial duels, he's simply not going to do that. So I think he is the classic sort of player where if he played 20 years ago and he was the little man in a big man, little man partnership, it'd have been great. Thinking someone like Jermaine Defoe and he played up front with Peter Crouch, that sort of player, I think he'd have done really well. But yeah, unfortunately, in the modern era, I just think it's a little bit trickier for him.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Any other players you want to tell us about that you think could hurt us? I mean, I suppose I'm thinking of Munoz there, who seems really attacking. But any players we should be looking out for?
Yeah, so I mean, I know you play your fantasy football, and
I
Daniel
do.
Munoz is a really good pick because he is so dynamic. He's an absolute joy to watch. To be honest with you, Palace fans absolutely love him. He's only been at the club for just over a year, but he's already become a massive player for us. He runs all day long up and down that right hand side. Sometimes you could question the end product, but he has been definitely getting better with that. But yeah, he's just full of energy and he's a real asset to our team. He's the sort of player that really you need in Oliver Glasner's system. And then also on that right hand side, I have to mention Ismail Assar because you know he was excellent on Saturday. He's had a really, really good season. We signed him for £12 million from Marseille. He was the kind of Michael Elise replacement. I don't like saying that because I don't think anyone could replace Michael Elise, but he has done remarkably well. And he's the sort of player where on his day, he is incredibly hard to stop. Even the top Premier League teams struggle to stop him when he's on song. Obviously, about the threat of Jean-Philippe Mateta, Abire Eze as well. And of course, I have to mention Adam Wharton because I think when he is at his best, I mean, I don't like saying it, but when he's at his best, he's far too good for Palace. And I do think that as Palace fans, we need to kind of enjoy him because we're not going to have him forever. He's going to move on to bigger and better things because he's 21 years old. And quite simply, I can't see many 21-year-olds in centre midfield doing the sort of things that he does.
How much is he worth? I saw an article, I think, saying Liverpool interest at 50 million. 50 million feels pretty low to me. What just out of curiosity, what figure would you put on him?
Yeah, so I said on our pod that 50 million for me, that's the right leg. That's not even the left leg. So yeah, I think to be honest with you, we should be looking for 100 million. And listen, fans of other clubs say, oh, fans always say that, don't they? 100 million pounds. But I think when you look at how good he is and also how good he actually could be, I mean, if he keeps on getting better, he's going to be absolutely ridiculous. So, yeah, I mean, I think that he would do a good job for the likes of Liverpool, Man City, Real Madrid have been watching him this season as well. Their scouts have been at Selhurst quite a lot. So, yeah, I don't want to sort of, sound like one of those fans who thinks their player is better than everyone else's. But if I was Palace, based on the kind of modern market, I'd be looking for £100 million.
When you bought him, I didn't know anything about him, to be honest. I just heard his name a bit. Were there lots of other clubs in for him that you can recall or were aware of, or did Palace just really steal a march from everyone?
I think there are a few Premier League clubs interested, but I think once again that was a classic case of we didn't do much business that summer, so we had a bit of money to spend in January. We needed to spend it because we weren't doing particularly well. We bought in Wharton and Munoz, and yeah, I mean, listen, I think it was something like £18 million we spent on him. I mean, that's going to prove to be an absolute snip. Obviously, I mentioned the fact that early in the season he did have that groin issue. I suppose that might be the only concern moving forwards, but yeah, he's just a fantastic player. And again, a really good bit of recruitment from us. It's something that we've done well in the past, get players from the championship. When he was in the championship, I think everyone knew how good he was, but there's probably more noise about Alex Scott, who was at Bristol City and is an out at Bournemouth. But yeah, I think for me, Adam Wharton has the higher ceiling.
I had to unmute myself there. Sorry, someone's cutting the lawn next door in the background. I don't think you can hear that. Apologies if you can, everyone. Just on Forest then, I think we're recording this again before any Nuno press. I think Hudson-Odoi is going to miss out through injury. So just assuming he's out, how do you view Forest, the threat we pose? Are you feeling pretty chipper because our form has faded, or are you still worried about what we can bring?
Oh, I think I'm always very wary of a backlash. I thought the goals that you gave away against Brentford were really poor goals and really unlike Forest this season. I'm also a fantasy football manager and I've had Matt Sells in goal for a lot of the campaign because you've been so good defensively. You kept so many clean sheets. I thought those goals were really un-Forest like. I think it's tricky because obviously you've had such a good season and for so long it's looked like you were going to get that Champions League spot. Now it's a bit more up in the air. Um, you know, Selhurst Park is never an easy place to come to. But as I said earlier, I do think that really it's a much bigger game for you guys. So, in terms of motivation, I'm expecting Forest to be bang at it. I do also think that stylistically, it's not necessarily a good matchup for us because we're also a team that doesn't really dominate possession. I think we've got sort of the third or fourth lowest average possession in the Premier League this season. So I think stylistically, it's not a great matchup for us. We like teams maybe that come on to us and teams that we can play through a little bit easier. So it could be quite a cagey game, but yeah, listen, I think you've had a fantastic season. And I do think that it's really important to remember that even if you don't get in the Champions League this season, even if you get in the Europa League, that's still a phenomenal season. It's the sort of thing that Palace fans would absolutely bite your hand off for. Obviously, we're desperately hoping that we win this first major trophy and we get into Europe that way. But yeah, Palace fans would love to have a season in Europe, whether it's Conference League or Europa League. We would kill for that. So yeah, if you don't get it, I think you should still reflect on a really good season.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's a good point. And I think you're right. I hadn't really thought about the matchup, but when I think of Palace at their best, I think, Minos rampaging down the right, Nketiah charging through the middle, that real counter-attacking threat with Sarr in particular. I think of a goal he scored against Brighton and things like that. So yeah, us sitting in doesn't feel the worst thing to me at all. Just before we go, where can people find more of you guys, Matt, if they want to hear the Palace point of view on this game?
Yeah, so myself and my cousin Ben, we are the Team Called Palace podcast. Our podcast available on Spotify and iTunes. We usually do one pod a week after the game, talking about the next game, and then we also do some sort of historical content as well, looking back on great days supporting Palace. There have been some, maybe not as great as days you've had supporting Forest, but yeah, that's where you can find us.
Well, we wish you well for Wembley, certainly, and I'm sure 99% of Forest fans will be backing Palace in that one when we watch that. One other quick point before we close as well. The FA Cup final, it's a bit of a shambles to me. The kickoff time, I don't think it's even been confirmed yet. I was looking at the fixture list, it just says TBC. The devaluing of the FA Cup, there's still, it's been played with 2 Premier League games to go as well. Is that disappointing for you?
I think it is disappointing. I think even if we weren't in the final, I'd say it was quite disappointing because, growing up, I remember when the FA Cup final was a massive thing. I know once upon a time it was one of the few games shown live on TV, but when I was growing up, there was coverage sort of from 9 a.m. in the morning building up to the game. It was always the final game of the season, wasn't it? Obviously, it's not anymore. It's the penultimate week of the Premier League season, which just seems a little bit weird. Yeah, and as you said, the fact that we still don't know the kickoff time, we know how much the tickets are going to cost. They're going to cost an arm and a leg, but we don't know the kickoff time yet. So, yeah, I do think they could do more to sort of protect the FA Cup and kind of protect that magic. I mean, obviously, I'm also incredibly biased because we're in the final, but I do think that there should be a European spot for the FA Cup. Obviously, Man City are going to be in Europe. I do think that the other team that's in the final, if they're not already in Europe, I think they should be as well because you see so many places going to the Premier League. This is the world's premier sort of cup competition. You know, why can't you have a finalist in Europe? And obviously, as I said, I'm incredibly biased because we're there, but I would have said it in the past for the likes of Watford, teams like that as well. So, yeah, I do think that there are things they could do to help to keep the magic of the FA Cup alive.
Excellent, excellent, good stuff. Just before we leave it there, thanks to our second sponsors of this episode, Peak Media Marketing. As I've been saying for a few weeks now, if you're looking to grow your business, achieve results through climbing the Google rankings, improve your social media presence, SEO advice, these are the people for you. If you want to take your business to the next level, they will come in and give you the advice you need. So thanks very much for their backing. Do check out the link, it's in the description, but also it's on screen now, peakmediamarketing.co.uk/forest. And also, as we sign off, do us a favor, hit like, hit subscribe on this video, do consider membership or Patreon, or just give us a lovely 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. We are back on Monday with our post-match show, and then Tuesday we'll delve into deeper to whatever happens at Selhurst Park. So if we don't see you for that, then we shall see you soon.